Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith,
I'm Augusto Pinaud.
and we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 104 for April 25th, 2022. iOS Focus Mode comes to Gmail and Google Chat, and of course, the productivity and technology news this week. Each week, we review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week for you. And with that, we start with the productivity articles first. Then we go into, after the break, the productivity technology articles. And then we usually do a productivity resource of the week. Then we do the featured story discussion. So with that, let us start with our stories of the week in the productivity article space. Augusto, what's our first article this week?
So our first article this week is from Wired, and it's how to use block scheduling to revamp your workflow. And it's a good article. It reminds you, well, what you did in high school, and why they blocked and why the time blocking. But I think it's trying to bring the term block scheduling to what time blocking really is. And it's not about article. It has a really good things, blocking or boxing, plan ahead but be flexible. It is a really good article. But again, I think it went into trying to accomplish everything that in a way made it diluted because of that, and try to bring this concept of try to bring this concept of block scheduling that at least you did not convince me that this is different than time blocking based on what I read on the articles. But again,
Yeah,
it was a good article.
what I heard in the article, this Wired article talks about basically the three different types of time blocking in addition to time blocking, and so talks about time blocking, task batching, day theming, and then time boxing, and gives kind of a definition for those four types of block scheduling methods. The thing that I didn't particularly agree with is that we're going to only use one of these. I really believe that there is some level of overlap between certain things you want to get done and wanting to be able to utilize each of these in different capacities. I use three of these types throughout my week, and I don't have any problem with that. And so I do it in a GTD flavor, but I definitely use these things, and so I don't think there's anything wrong with mixing and matching the methods to be able to be more productive.
Yeah, our next articles for Fortune, and is your boss thinks you know you have no long-term future at your job if your camera is on and your microphone is off. So apparently you throw the camera. So that's really worries me as your co-host. But okay,
I did that on
they
purpose.
they interview a bunch of executive, and 96% of them think, well, if you're not engaged, you don't turn on your camera, you may not be that engaged. I don't know if I agree with necessarily with that. I have worked with organizations where the camera is on when the camera is important, where people wants to be there, and I have worked in other organizations where nobody turns the camera and nobody thinks they are unengaged. So I'm curious about these executives that were surveyed and what was their culture in their company. They may, for what it is a camera on culture. That is fine. But again, I have seen many organizations where camera off is completely fine.
I can see why organizations would have a lot of executives who would believe that, because most organizations have pretty poor managers. And so, especially when you deal with middle management and the fact that most people are elevated to managing people without the skills taught to them about how to manage people. So you come into environments where you are a technical expert, you've excelled in your technical expertise, and then they tell you, well, because you have excelled in your technical expertise, you now can be elevated to a new role doing absolutely something different than your technical expertise, which is managing people who are doing what you're technically competent in. And I just think that's really obtuse. And that kind of leads us to our next article, which is the Marcus Buckingham interview. And funny enough, Marcus Buckingham is the one who wrote the book First Break All the Rules. And he's the person who taught me the fact that in his book, this is the problem with most positions. We say, oh, you did really well as a secretary. Instead of paying you more to be the best damn secretary you could be, let's elevate you now to another role that you're not actually good at. We'll pay you more money. And now you fail in that position or you do it mediocre because, like that's the nature of the beast. You're really good at this set of skills. You should be paid more, continuing to do that set of skills more and more optimally. And we forget that about the way in which we both empower and upskill our employees. And so if you're going to have managers who are bad at managing, they're naturally going to presume that if they can't see you, you're not doing the right things in the right time and the right spaces. And that really is the crux of what Marcus Buckingham is saying here. He's a data guy, right? So he's done all of the surveying, and he's basically saying, we've been more productive during the pandemic. We've proven that we can be productive in a hybrid and remote work first world. And at the same time, executives are kind of stuck because they don't know how to manage in this environment. What was your take on the Time article?
The Time article was very good, and I agree. It's why we insist on both sides. By the way, okay, organizations as well as people. Okay, we look at, let me grow, let me get to the next job, let me get to the next title, without necessarily prepare ourselves for the next title, and then we fail. And when we fail, it's like, well, I don't understand. But even at that point, we struggle into looking that support. That's part one. And part two is, I love, that concept that the how important flexibility it's turning into be, and how after the pandemic, uh, this has been. We were talking to an organization this week that I'm trying to help. They have the problem that in the different sectors, a nonprofit, okay, and they have gone from engagement, and their current engagement in some of the locations is 5%, five, and they're terrified because, well, if they don't get that engagement up, they can't keep operating, and they really don't know what to do, and they are struggling into trying to find what they can do and how they can keep the flexibility that people feel they have, but increase the engagement. And I think that's part, and we have discussed this ad nauseam in the last 2 years. There is people who was going to be happy to come back. There is people who not. But the flexibility, it's going to be that factor that is going to make a difference, regardless if you want to come back, because even those people who come back will have things, okay, that will require that flexibility. So it's really interesting. As a person who has been looking flexibility for so long, um, that was my thing when I began working my professional career some many years ago. Okay, that was my thing. What is the job? I didn't care about money. I didn't care about many other aspects. My question is, what is the job that if I get to be very, very, very good, I will have a lot of flexibility? And the answer was sales. Okay, sales is a job that if you are very, very good at what you do, okay, your amount of flexibility is incredible because company understand that you are very good at what you do and they give you that freedom. So it is really interesting for me seeing this come back now in a more generic way.
I would really recommend to everybody that once you get the link in the show notes to read through this article with Marcus Buckingham, he really details both the numbers side of this as well
Mhm.
as the kind of the myth of many of these things that we've been hearing throughout the course of the pandemic. And now we're seeing the data of the types of collecting that he's been doing and the analyses and basically the synthesis and analysis that you can take from this kind of situation. Like when we overtax our employees and we cause them to basically be stressed out, they are much more likely to want to leave the company. So making them less stressed actually makes them more productive. And this makes a lot of sense to me. We talk about we here have talked about psychological safety and the importance of creating that kind of safety. And yes, there's some level of positive stress, what we consider eustress, but everyone's different, right? And most people are much less likely to want high levels of stress, whether that be categorical stress, that is a negative stressor, like someone passing away or something like that, and also good stress, like, oh, I would really like you to take on 15 projects tomorrow, Gusto. That's that's a volume based stress as opposed to just a categorical stress. Both of those levels of stress become negative for people. And if we can understand that for most organizations, people are going to work best when they're not super stressed out. Better yet, not even overly stressed out, in the sense of just pushing negative stressors on them, they're or stressors generally on them. They're going to be productive in that space. They don't need what we tend to think about when we think about executives needing to poke and prod people to get things done. And the people who need that kind of thing, that's where teaching them these kinds of productivity skills and the importance of mission and vision, I mean, really works. It really helps people kind of latch on to why they're doing the work they're doing in an organization. And that's a meaning problem. And I I try to always explain that to my clients. If you have a poor performer, it is likely because they don't believe in your mission. And you can either help them believe in your mission, or they can move on, right? And there's kind of a difference there. And many times people just don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And as soon as they understand that, then they get on board real quick. So, all right, on to our next story.
So those are our three stories this week on the productivity articles. So.
Got it. All right. So we are going to then hop over to our break for the show. And when we get back, we will hop into our tech stories. And so now a word from our sponsor this week, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. We'll see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith with Augusto Pinaud, of course, and we're going to get into our second half of the show, which are our technology headlines this week. Augusto, what is our first headline this week?
So I'm very biased about this, but you can now try the 1Password new customizable design. You can sign up. 1Password, it's been a favorite app for me. I don't know how many years. I remember I used a Splash ID because that's what the Palm had. And then when I moved to the iPhone, you use a Palm Splash ID until 1Password came. When that was, I don't know. I don't remember, but that's as many years I have using that thing. And it is gorgeous. The new app, the new icons, uh, it is such a gorgeous app. So not only they are making more things on the engine, they are allowing you to customize how you use it and make it really, 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 really pretty.
Yeah, and you can look in the article and like pan back and forth between the two different versions. Like the article has a little uh, bar, so you can like pan back and forth between the two versions that are out, and you can see how much nicer the new version really looks. It's really, really nicely done. I am, of course, not going to be putting beta versions on my devices
No,
or
me neither.
or recommending to anyone to be using beta versions. But if you want to like look around and see what it's all about, definitely check it out. I just wouldn't recommend a beta password manager because it's your password manager. You really don't want a beta version of that. But if you have a spare device and you want to play around, then by all means, just make sure your passwords are on a device with the stable version, the general release version that is out there, so that you're not losing any passwords or having any frustration in that regard. But I'm very, very excited to see this. I have lots of clients who use 1Password, and so just seeing the customization capabilities and the interface just looks nicer, as you noted, Augusto. There's just kind of a slicker view to it all, and just you were noting password history. I was a KeePass user for many, many years, which is the old open source password manager, and it was horrible. It worked, but it was just terrible. I'm so glad to see that password managers have become so much more useful and so much friendlier for users today, because they're vital. I mean, we really need to make sure everybody has a password manager today. And if you don't have a password manager, please get a password manager. It will save you from a lot of heartache in the future regarding security and data privacy. All right, next up, more password management stuff. Go figure.
More password, and Microsoft is bringing autofill support to the Authenticator. The Microsoft Authenticator, it's getting more powerful. And if you use Edge on the phone or any other device, they have already an extension that you can use the autofill. If you want to use it on the phone or the Android, you need to update to the new version. But the beautiful thing with this is, I get it. Okay, I don't understand that you don't want to type 16 characters password. I get it. Okay, this will get you to populate, autofill, and then being able to really have those really long. And not about Authenticator, but it's one of the things I love about 1Password is they have a browser internally. I don't even need to go to my browser to use those. I can do some inside in that bubble, and I really, really like that.
Yeah, so as I understood the article, I have not seen this yet in Authenticator. I believe it's just generating a secure password and then filling it in. So you would still need to save that password in your password manager of choice. I don't believe that Authenticator is saving that password for you. So you need to
I
make sure.
understood it well. I understood the Edge was going to save it securely and allows you to bridge Authenticator to the Edge extension to the browser.
Interesting.
But I could be completely wrong. I don't
Well,
use
well,
Microsoft products.
we'll have to ask Art Gelwitz.
Yes, we need to
Because
ask Art because I don't.
yeah, I have Authenticator on my devices, but Microsoft's Authenticator on my devices just for a few accounts, some 365 accounts, but I haven't actually tested this feature. So I'll ask Art, and then I'll test it out myself and make sure that we report back to you all on that, because that would be very, very slick. That if it were connecting to Edge and doing that, I don't use Edge either. So that, but it's a Chromium-based browser, so it has a built-in password manager. So I could see how that could be really seamless for a lot of people. If they were using Microsoft Edge, and the Authenticator all packaged together. So very cool. All right, on to our next story this week.
So our next story on Todoist is the integration of Akiflow. Akiflow basically will allows you to get your task and calendars together so you can plan your day with a lot more ease. So you can plan your schedule, your task in the Google Calendar, get desktop notification, get import task into Todoist, use the label, and everything else. So it basically bring if you imagine your screen with the calendar, basically will bring the task or certain task into the side, and you will be able to have everything on one screen. It seems very interesting, and it's good to see it coming for integration with Google and Todoist.
Yeah, it's basically like a non-Microsoft Outlook without the email, and so it brings I've been playing around with Akiflow. I just testing it for sake of play, because I like to know about these things. And so Akiflow is actually a really, really streamlined environment. It's a nice application. It's stable, and you can connect multiple accounts to it and multiple different types of task integrations. So you can have, say, Google Tasks, and you can have your now Todoist, and you can have these different task management apps in there. Of course, as a Remember the Milk user, I cannot do that, which is why I'm not using Akiflow. So if the Akiflow people are listening, hey, I'd love Remember the Milk to be in there. But either way, it's actually a really nice environment because you can see your tasks and you can see your calendar, and then you can see them, just seamlessly overlay and then be able to toggle them on and off. And it has nice features in terms of being able to reschedule, a little bit akin to maybe SchedPal, and that kind of concept of being able to have some quick pieces, not with as much algorithmic determination as to the where tasks go. You really do a lot of that. But Akiflow is actually really nice. And there's a free version, by the way. So if you're paying for Todoist and you want to be able to still use Akiflow, there are some limitations on the free plan, but you can try the free plan out and see if it works for you, and then upgrade if you want all of the bells and whistles that it provides. Right. So really, really nice application, and I appreciate what the Akiflow folks are doing. All right, on to the next.
On the Chromebook. Now you can open Google Drive images directly on PicStart for web-based editing. So, I'm fascinated with the Chromebooks. No, I'm not leaving my iPads anytime soon. Okay, but I'm still fascinated. Because I think they're getting more and more and more powerful, and without making too much noise about it. And suddenly one day we're going to wake up and say, geez, these things are very powerful. And that is really, really interesting. And this is another example. You can go to the Google Drive. You can now directly on the browser edit with PicStart. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, I see the holy grail for Chromebooks really becoming dominant to be able to do seamless photo editing, seamless video editing, seamless audio editing. And once those three multimedia components are available within the Chrome OS environment and it's just seamless for them, I think that users will very easily come over to Chromebooks. And it's not a person who's a power PC user. Like, that's not the person who's going to go there. But there's a whole generation of people coming online, and as they're growing up, they can use this kind of lightweight technology, lightweight hardware resources, and get an operating system that will do everything they want to do online, and that's really, really powerful.
Well, but even I can tell you, I can share this. My daughter, she's not a power user. I get it. She's 14. Okay, 13, not even 14, 13. Okay, but Chrome OS is the OS that she has used the most. Okay, probably next to iOS. Why? Because that's what a school have. Okay, that's the Chromebook that she do. So for her, it's an OS where she can move really, really, really comfortable. And the fact that that machine is getting more and more powerful, when the decision to upgrade and get a computer will be, there is no doubt on her mind. Why do it? Unless it's a software that she need to run that will not run into that, she will most likely will not get a Mac or a PC. Not because any other reason that why I can do this. I know the software, I know the application, and I've been using it for the last X amount of years.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a whole generation of people like your daughter who are just so comfortable with utilizing that tool. And I know that the article from Chrome Unboxed also noted Canva and its capabilities. I mean, Canva has put so much of the power of design into an application ecosystem, meaning that you could do all of these things in an Android app on the Chrome OS environment, which just removes
same
a bunch
on
of
an
hurdles.
Same on an iPad, and I laugh because I deal a lot of designer for what I do for a living, and used to be that they send us, I used to talk about this app who allows you to open those Adobe files into the iPad and all that. And now they send you Canva. They don't even, I don't know if they export and import it or create it in there. I honestly have no clue. But when they share now, they share in Canva, and it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how Adobe responds, because Adobe responded originally to Creative Cloud, right? And so Creative Cloud is now the basic challenger to Canva, but it pales in comparison to the number of businesses I know that use Canva and can quickly design. If you're putting together a 50, 100-page annual report, yes, InDesign is your tool. But most businesses are not
But
doing
if you're
that.
doing a
So
banner,
right. A
Canva will be your
flyer,
tool any day of the
brochure,
week.
all of that stuff is templated and easy to produce. I'm really giving it credit for where credit's due. And I'm really loving the fact that now this is all just available in the Chrome OS environment, and of course all of the other browsers and application ecosystems. So good on Canva, great Australian company. So onward to our next story.
So our next story is Google Workplace customers will now able to create dynamic groups, so groups that will update automatically based on department location and other conditions. So I'm going to let you talk more about that for obvious reasons, but tell us more about it.
Yeah, so dynamic groups are in essence a way for you to be able to, and this is on the enterprise level. So for most of you listening, you are not going to have access to this potentially ever, but certainly not in the short term. So this is for folks who are in an enterprise environment of the Google Workspace kind. In essence, you can create filters, or if anyone knows regex, you're basically creating, not you, Reggie, but regex. The idea is that you would create regular expressions and filter for a set of criteria, and then those criteria creates the group of people that then get access to particular things. Groups currently in the Google Workspace environment are, you select the members of that group, and then they get access to an email address and access to anything you give them access to through that group. So you can say these applications are given access to this group, these folders in Drive are given to this group, that kind of thing. Now you can do that dynamically. And again, at the enterprise standard plus and other versions higher than that. I think it's going to, I can't imagine that Google won't bring this kind of thing down to the lower plans for small business owners eventually. But at the present moment, it's up at the higher levels. I think they're probably testing this out on that level to just kind of separate more what is business and what is enterprise. But I think that they will probably bring this to the masses eventually, because this is just such a really great feature. And I'm sure that it takes a bit of extra processing power to make it happen as well. And so we'll see how they implement that on the enterprise level. I've actually haven't seen it specifically. Now, for those of you who are in an enterprise environment, this is regarding email and distribution lists. This is regarding groups and collaborative inboxes, and then security groups. So it's not even extending to file systems or the file like drive files or drive folders or any of those application based memberships yet. So I misspoke before. So just be aware that this is just really regarding email and distribution lists, as well as those kinds of groups and collective collaborative inboxes. So that's a start. I think that they're going to do a lot more with this, and then you can start to create some really interesting queries. And so they utilize a set of variables. So you basically set conditions. And you can say everybody in Canada gets access to these things, or everybody in the US in California get access to these things. So you could do it based on location. You could do it based on all kinds of other types of things, keywords, you name it. So they're giving a lot of flexibility in the system, and I'm hoping that they give access down to the business, at least the business plus folks. So Google Workspace Business Plus folks. But we'll see. I think that this is going to be a really interesting new feature. But I would really like to see, which is what I thought originally, was that they were going to be providing your ability to say, okay, if I put everybody in this group, they're going to automatically be given these team drives. These shared drives are going to be automatically giving access, and those kinds of things. Right now, they're just
That
limiting
would be
that.
really powerful.
Yeah. But right now, that's not the case. So I misspoke because I thought it was, but It's not. But I hope they go there. I really do. I think that'll be a really, really powerful piece, because then I can, I'm onboarding people right now, and it would be really great if I could just say, oh, everybody in this group that's in the marketing department gets access to all these things immediately. And everybody who's in accounting and finance, they get automatic access to these things immediately, and not having to do all of those things manually. You set it and forget it kind of thing.
Right.
All right. On to our next story. Back to some Microsoft news.
So back to Microsoft, and Microsoft is making a comparison between Outlook Task and Microsoft To Do. If you remember, or if you don't, Microsoft To Do was basically what used to be Wunderlist, and to many people's surprises, including mine, okay, Microsoft got it, made a little bit, but didn't destroy it. That is what I thought Microsoft was going to do with Wunderlist. No, they rename it and make it really, what it was. And what it came interesting to me was how they did that, then they eliminate the task out of the free version of Outlook. So if you don't have the pro or premium or whatever is called version of Outlook, you really have no task. You have notes, you have email, and you have calendar, but you have no tasks. So that way, I'm going to assume they push you to do to Microsoft To Do. That said, Microsoft To Do, it comes pre-installed in every Windows, and it is very, very powerful, as Wunderlist was. So this comparison, it's a little tough on the sense that, well, you need to be on that group of have access to both, okay? And most people, even on the corporate level, don't. Most people have access to the free Outlook and Todoist, but not both. So that's the first thing that I think it was a little unfair. That said, they go into, okay, let's compare what is the best for group projects, what is the best for organization, what is the best for customization for you. So if you are in that environment, you live on Microsoft, you are interested in using, or you're debating between Microsoft Task and Microsoft Outlook Task and Microsoft To Do, go and read the article. It was a very well written article. But if not, and you are curious what is Microsoft solution, make sure to download Microsoft To Do, because they have been doing a really good job keeping that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful application. I think the article comes down right, which is that while Outlook Tasks is just clunky, it just doesn't look as beautiful as Microsoft To Do, but it has the ability to integrate fully within the Outlook system. And so even in the Outlook mobile application, you see your Outlook tasks, but you can't see those Outlook tasks in To Do. And as someone maybe who uses Outlook and the task system will know this better than me, but my understanding is that you add your Outlook tasks in the system, you can collaborate with those, you can filter based on those, you could do all those fun things. You're creating email tasks, tasks from your email, you can embed those all in that system. It's a bit decoupled, and
It
then
is
Microsoft
completely decoupled,
and then
as far as I
Microsoft To Do is
understand.
kind of separated from that. And so, but you can see your Microsoft To Do items in your Outlook environment to some extent. So it's just a weird environment where you see like tasks and you see the two different sets of lists. It's just very confusing to me. And so I think just streamlining to use one tool for work and one tool maybe for personal. I would say personal would be To Do and work would be Outlook tasks. And that way you kind of have a clear separation. Plus, you can filter very quickly and easily with Outlook tasks in their various lists. You can set up lists in the system and be really mindful about that piece of it. So I would just say that while Microsoft To Do is beautiful, it's still limiting in that sense because of the fact that Microsoft is not like, why doesn't Microsoft just override Outlook tasks with Microsoft To Do and fully bake it in? They've got it baked into Teams, as I understand it. I don't really use Teams very much, but Microsoft To Do is pretty tightly integrated with the apps, right? In Teams. I don't see Outlook tasks in there. Is Outlook tasks in Teams?
I
I
don't
thought it
think
was just
so.
To Do. I think it was
I
just To
think
Do.
it is on, at least on the PC version. I don't see it that integrated on the mobile ones, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, so I just feel like they're a little bit confused as to what they're doing right now with tasks and to do, and I wish they would just bring them together so that people aren't confused. And it's just like when Microsoft put out the Lists app, and now they're really working on this Loop framework, and I would really love to see, or the app Loop, which is on the Fluid framework. I'd really love them to just give us a little bit more. Like, I understand that Loop and the Fluid framework is supposed to be a challenger to Notion and what Notion is doing, but give me a little more. Can you explain it to me just so that we know where we should be looking to identify what's personal and what is kind of enterprise and organizational productivity focused stuff? But again, I thought the article was really good because it does give people at least a set of understanding as to why they should use one or the other for certain circumstances.
I agree with you.
All right, onto our business and finance segment. We just have one article there.
So Memex,
which is a note-taking application, by the way. So if anybody who doesn't know, Memex is this note-taking application. There's lots of folks who kind of have jumped on the Memex bandwagon, and so it's a note-taking app.
Right, and they suddenly went from an open source model, completely open, to decide we need to make money too. So they close some pieces of the software, so that way they could really work into figure it out what kind of model they can use to make money out of this.
Yeah, so I followed I'm guessing one of the co-founders' explanations in a Discord channel, and he has been very transparent and forthright about the circumstance. The circumstances were overly exaggerated by the open source advocates. I'm an open source advocate. I totally get it. But there are just circumstances where, and rightly understood by this particular person, that there are just different flavors of sourcing, open or closing source. And he wants to be able to fit a model where he can have stable income for his business, and then they can potentially open source again. Right? There's nothing stopping them from opening the source. I know that there are folks who are working on some open source. They basically wanted to use the source code for other projects, right? And that's totally also interesting and useful in the open source community. But if you're not paying me for producing code, it's not my responsibility to you to continue developing for the code that I'm writing. I can write my code however I want to. So the fact that some of these open source folks who are basically poaching the software and using it for their own projects were upset, they can continue using the source code as of the last version, and they can continue maintaining and updating it according to that license. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. But the fact that they don't want to do the heavy lifting that Memex was doing doesn't quite, it doesn't pass muster in my book. So I hope they can find funding. I hope that they can then potentially have a scale where they open source over time faster than, say, Microsoft, right? I think right now Microsoft is out. What did they open source most recently? It was like, I don't know, Windows 3.1. I'm joking, but I mean, like, it's they've recently open sourced some very, very old version of Windows. We can see more and more open sourcing of proprietary software over time, but they've got to figure out their business. Otherwise, Memex is going to go out of business, and it's going to be one less tool on the market. And I think that doesn't help anybody either. So I feel for them, and I also recognize that there was a large outcry that all of a sudden they were doing something that was somehow wrong or somehow pulling the wool over people's eyes. That was not any of the case there. They were just really trying to figure out what's the next step for Memex at all. And if they can make it work, then they will. And hopefully open source it again. Right. All right. With that, we are moving on to our productivity resources of the week. Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools, apps, and resources, services in our productivity journeys to bring you our stories each week. And so in productivity resources of the week, we each bring you one potentially new, potentially old tool, whatever, that we think you might like. And so our first one up is, I'm not going to bring anything up on screen tonight just because I was having some technical issues earlier, and I don't want to, tempt the fates. But I wanted to let everybody else know that Google finally announced the switch to Android app. So I'm not calling for anyone to leave iPhones, but for iPhone users who do want to switch over to an Android, it is not the easiest of processes, right? And so this switch to Android app now in the App Store, that is the iOS App Store, is now available. So it is now giving people the ability to just pull all of those pieces so that you're able to transition seamlessly. And this happens with a lot of different circumstances. For example, if you have an iPhone for work, and you want to be able to then have an Android device for home or a secondary phone, those kinds of things, that transition process is really difficult. And the switch to Android app will now solve some of those headaches, because you can say, okay, I want to move these things over from the iOS and platform to the Android. And I will tell you this, I owned an iPhone way back in the day. I think it was like a 3S, and I had always used Google Contacts on the iPhone. I'd always used Google Gmail on the iPhone. I used all Google products on the iPhone. So transitioning from that to the other was really, really simple, because the iPhone didn't have any of my data, really. It was
Right.
just a vessel. It was really good hardware, right? It was a really good hardware and did really well. It's kind of like the iPad for me today. The iPad, I don't use any of the Apple apps. Like they're all just it's great hardware. It does really great stuff, and Apple Pencil, iPad, whatever. But everything that I have on it are other products. They're other cross-platform tools. And so just keep that in mind if you do plan to make that kind of switching back and forth between platforms, and keeping that in mind. But I think that the switch to Android app is a really, really great tool to have in your back pocket for those kinds of circumstances. Augusto, what is your tool this week?
So more than a tool, it's a discussion. Okay. And the reason is this tool. Okay. This is the books. And we have discussed about this tool in the show previously. It is an Android tablet with e-ink. Okay. And I got a unit to test. And so the first thing that came with this unit, or that was shocking for me, was how not user friendly it was. And the way it got for me was from a client. Okay, the client got the tablet, and he was thinking, oh, it was going to be as easy to set up as my iPad, and I'm going to be running. And it was not like that. So he shipped it to me and said, can you please figure this out? So I've been playing with it, and then I will ship it back. But that's what it is. Great. Okay, the ink in the tablet, it is very, very interesting. But it came to what I wanted to discuss today, and is cellular data versus hotspot. Okay, and when you get these tablets and this device, yeah, I get it. When you want the cellular data, one, you pay $150 to $200 more for the device, plus now you need to add the $10 or $20 monthly plan to get the data on the tablet. And I don't remember which one was the first iPad that I make the jump to that. And before I made the jump, I always look into, well, how many times do I really need the data? That I cannot connect to my phone. It's worth it, the $100 a year, $200 a year, whatever. And I was no. And I think it was on one of the iPad Pro, the 9.7, that I finally got it with data. And I remember the realization, oh, so what they say? Penny wise, dollar fool is what they said.
Penny wise, pound foolish. Yes.
Foolish. That's exactly how I felt for the $100 difference, because it is true. Connect to hotspot on your phone is seconds, but it's seconds that will bring that barrier of, oh, but I need to connect. Okay, I do it later. While the the tablet's connected, there is no thinking about it. You will jump directly into make that. And I have been reminded of that with this device. This device do not have data, need to connect to my phone or Wi-Fi to be here. So a couple of times I've been playing with this outside of my house, and it's like, oh yeah, but I have nothing. So let's tether and all that. So I just wanted to bring that as my tool of the week. If your next device have that cellular data, consider the productivity gains of that, not the dollar cost of that. That was what I didn't evaluate from the productivity perspective. And the moment I did, it was fantastic because I can grab now any of my iPads and be connected all the time, anytime, always. So it's not I need to pull the phone and connect it. No, it's already full data, full running, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that comes into play with regard to smartwatches, right? Whether that's the Apple Watch or Samsung Galaxy Watch or any of the other smartwatches that are out there, Fitbits included, which are a Google-owned product. Like having that level of connectivity when you walk away from your phone and you're just watch oriented. There are limitations once you break that connection, and having LTE or hopefully 5G on many of these now going forward, you're going to have that level of connectivity. And so you should consider that how often you basically go off the grid and disconnect from
Mhm.
your phone, as to making those kinds of choices. But certainly in the tablet space and as well as in the laptop space, there are a few Chromebooks left that have built-in data, and I'm hoping that more of the Chromebooks come out, and certainly more of the Mac and PC laptops start to, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know why,
I
but
don't understand why either.
you would
I'm
think that
sure
would
there
be
is a patent troll somewhere
that stop
that
them
has
from
not
doing
made
it.
that
That's a
possible.
good. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, it just makes no sense that I shouldn't. You have a Samsung, Samsung Galaxy Book Pro. Why shouldn't it have a SIM card in it, SIM card slot, and just be able to click it in and go work right wherever I'm at, and I don't have to connect to some silly cafe's Wi-Fi or having to tether to my phone in order to be able to work. I should just be able to work solo of the phone and be more productive because you have the phone there sitting on your table with you wherever you are mobily. Now you're being distracted by the notifications on the phone, which
Right.
brings us to our story of the week, which is that iOS focus mode has now embraced Google Chat and Gmail. So tell us a little bit about that.
So iOS focus mode it's been really, really interesting. And I wasn't sure what's going to happen. And I have been enjoying and I need to recognize that it has not been really productive for me. Not because the feature is not productive, but because I have tinkered so much to find the perfect ones. But it happened to me today. I wanted to do something, and it was so easy to put my phone into focus mode so I could work. And I have now different things. And one of the things that are cool is you can say, okay, I only want this group of people to be able to pass, or I want anybody, or I want these applications to be able to give me notifications, or nobody. In my case, I was no notification, and it was lovely when I went out of that sprint that I needed to make. That the iPad and the phone are telling me this is all that beep on your phone or your device while you were in focus mode. So I think the fact that Google is doing that and allowing you to choose who can get through you while you are on focus mode, it is really, really powerful, and it's going to be really, really welcome.
Yeah, I think that this is fantastic. I think that being able to choose who gets to email you during your focus mode sessions, so to speak, as well as Google Chat, especially for those mission critical chats that you want to be able to get. This gives you the opportunity to be able to do that. And just so folks know, this is also coming out to not just Google Workspace users, but also to Google Workspace personal users. So this is on the business side and on the personal. So everybody's getting access to this on iOS. So
Mhm.
for me, where I'm not on iOS other than the iPad, I absolutely love this concept because I'll basically have this in focus mode all the time, except when I want to be able to set to receive things like specific email or specific
Right.
chats during specific times of the day. So I think this is going to be a really good piece for me to be able to utilize. Otherwise, I just turn off all the notifications because I just don't want anything notifying me on the iPad. But I feel like there are times when it would be really useful to be able to get some of these notifications to break through and notify me. And so I'll be really curious to see all that happening. For most of you, you should already see this coming out. If not, you'll see it over the next few days. But it's been rolling out across all of the release schedules, so you'll be seeing it roll out. If you haven't already seen it, you should see it now. So you'll just need to update both your operating system and the application to make sure that if you are on the latest version of iOS and the latest version of the apps, you should see it come out to you as well. So go use focus mode and get some work done.
Yep. So our announcement for the week is the New York Library. It's offer free banned e-readers book. So during the month of May, the New York Public Library will basically release 4 banned books: Stamp, Speak the King of the Dragonflies, and Catcher in the Rye. And you will get it for free. You need to download their app.
Simply E.
Simply, thank you. And you will be able to get it. And it is, it is interesting that they are able to do that and get really in agreement with the publishers, because for libraries, the ebooks, as much as we think, oh, well, the ebook, they can get one ebook and rent it 1,000 times. That's not how the real thing works. The publishers they can only learn how many copies they get, so that limits and sometimes make really long waiting times. So it is really cool, to know that they're doing that. And as the article said, that their server has been crashed so many times from people trying to get the free books.
Yeah, I understand the political implications of this, and some people feeling one way or the other, and I don't particularly wade in those waters. But what I am curious about is giving access to books. I think is always I err on the side of access. I don't err on the side of limiting, and so I'm really really pleased to see them doing this, no matter what the content is. So I think that I'm really excited to see more of this kind of thing happen, because if you're going to tell me that I can't access one book, then it's inevitable that you're going to tell me that I can't access some other book, and I think that's just a free speech issue for me that I'm not willing to compromise on for everybody. I mean, I don't really see a reason why we need to be limiting these things from people. All right, Augusto, we've got some extra articles, but otherwise, we have covered the productivity and related technology news this week. Thanks to Augusto Pinaud for putting together the show this and every week. Thank you, Augusto.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. On anythingbutidle.com. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, that is already, because you're listening to the podcast. To those of you who are watching live, that's tomorrow. You'll find our show notes. Those will have links to all the stories, the tools of the week, our productivity resources of the week, and that will include extra stories that we didn't cover during our hour together today. It also includes a text transcript that's both readable right on the page, as well as one that is downloadable as a PDF. You could just download it offline and be able to read it. After looking at the show notes, let us know if there's a story that we missed, because it can happen. You can leave a comment, you can tweet or DM us at anything but idle, or you can use the contact form on the website and let us know. Give a comment or a question about anything we've discussed during the show. You can do the same. You can also join us in Personal Productivity Club. If you go to anythingbutidle.com/community, you'll be taken to the registration page. If you're not already a member of Personal Productivity Club, it's free. Register and you'll be able to access the Anything But Idle community group, and then you can engage in dialogue around any of the productivity topics that we talked about today. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button. If you are not watching the live stream, you're listening to the podcast, you can also click on the subscribe button by searching Anything But Idle on YouTube. And then when we go live each week, you can join us and hang out in the chat and comment along with us and have a good time. And of course, if you want to listen to the podcast, you can go find out about the podcast by going to anythingbutidle.com and clicking on the subscribe link, and they'll give you instructions on how to subscribe via email. You can subscribe in your favorite podcast app or otherwise. So lots of options to be able to get, the access to the episodes each week really easily. With that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life. Bye, everybody.